Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 114. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit that follow or subscribe button and check out my work at knac.com, featuring exclusive interviews you can't find on any of our streaming sources. My guest for this episode is blues guitarist Austin Walkin Cane. He has a brand new album out called MUSCLE SHOALS. It was released through HOBOVILLE Records. The longtime blues guitarist has opened up for the likes of B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Robert Randolph, ZZ Top, Deep Purple, and more. He's traveled the world. He's played festivals on worldwide stages. I had the chance to catch up with him and talk to him about this fantastic new album and the other projects he has going on. So here's Austin Walkin Cane. If I knew absolutely nothing about Austin Walkin Cane, how would you describe your music to me?
I always just call it damn fine blues. Primarily this MUSCLE SHOALS record is myself and a guitar. I was using a National resonator guitar for the whole thing, and I have two of them, a Tricone and an M2, and then an old Gibson guitar for a couple of songs. It's just old porch music.
Absolutely.
It sounds good,
It does, and the latest album, MUSCLE SHOALS, comes out March 17th through HOBOVILLE Records, and the album's title inspired by Fame Recording Studios, Muscle Shoals, Alabama. If you want to talk about how that studio inspired you and why you chose to record there.
Yeah, it was, I was going to Memphis in April of 2021. I have a whole bunch of friends down there, and they were going to throw a house concert to make me some money. And they said if I needed to get out, the one guy had an Air BnB that was 90% done. And he said that, we can't rent it out, but you could stay there if you want, for as long as you want. And I said, all right. So I came down and I ran into a guy who was telling me that Muscle Shoals, Alabama is only 2.5 hours from Memphis. So I thought that would be perfect. Maybe I'll just call up Fame Recording, or email rather, Fame Recording and Muscle Shoals Studio, and see if either one would respond, because I would love to, record there. Because I've always been fascinated by studios that my heroes walked in and made great music. So, I emailed Muscle Shoals and didn't hear back, and I emailed Fame, and they said, do you want to come on Tuesday or Wednesday? I rolled in on Wednesday and recorded 15 tunes in an afternoon. Fame Recording is where Aretha Franklin recorded I'll Never Love a Man the Way That I Love You, and, Solomon Burke did all his hits, and Wilson Pickett did Mustang Sally and In the Midnight Hour, and 6, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. And, Otis Redding recorded there. So the Allman Brothers started in the room next door. It was a jam session without Greg Allman. And, Dwayne, after 3 hours, the story goes that, he walked up to the door and said, if you guys don't join the band, you're going to have to fight me to get out. And, all this history is in this tiny little building in the middle of small town Muscle Shoals, Alabama.
When you went down to this Airbnb, had you intended to even make an album, or was it just like, I'll place a call to them if it happens, if it happens, if it doesn't, if it does, I'm ready?
Didn't think about it at all. I was going to treat it like a gig, just see like songs that whatever I feel like playing. It wasn't for anything other than, to say that I went and recorded there. Maybe if it came out cool, I could put a few tunes on a record, or maybe the whole thing. And my friend David Simmons from Memphis, he came down and videotaped a lot of it, and also photographed a lot of stuff. So it was pretty special day. And the last tune on the album is a tune called Sun Go Down. And it was kind of written on the way to Muscle Shoals. So I was just driving because it's a good 12-hour drive from Ohio. So, because I went there first and then went to Memphis. So I had this melody in my head, and a friend of mine, her son, unfortunately, had passed away. And I saw her, and she was kind of in my head. And, the song started happening. And then I was at a gas station, like a BP somewhere down, I'm not even sure what state. And I sang it into my phone and sent it to my co-writer, Chris Allen, who's been my good friend since we were little kids. He came up, he changed some of the lines, and, threw a guitar behind my voice. And I ended up going back to the hotel and working on it till 5 a.m. And then recorded it first tune at 10, and came out pretty cool. And the rest of the album had a vibe to it. It was real nice. So real laid back. For some reason, all the tunes meant something to me that I was doing that day. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about, one of the singles that you released from the album, meaning something to you, Waiting for a Little Sunshine. Was this sort of inspired by what was going on with lockdowns and all that other crazy stuff?
Actually, a lot of these songs were songs that I play probably 350 gigs a year. And I've been doing that for, 20 years. So when COVID hit, I kind of put down my guitar. And I only played live streams on the weekends. And it was a good rest for my hands, good rest for my voice. And I didn't work on that many tunes because I had just finished 2 albums that were finished on the same couple of sessions. We pounded through it as a band. So I didn't really have that many new tunes. Be honest with you, I'd been working at it so hard for the last 2 or 3 years. I kind of just gave myself a full-on break. So when I went to MUSCLE SHOALS, that's why the songs just kind of, I felt really confident with them because I've been playing them for a long time. And Waiting for a Little Sunshine was on One Heart Walking, with that album that came out in 2015. That song always meant a lot to a handful of people. So I thought I would do it for them. I thought that would be, and it was my mood at the time too. It seemed fitting to have that song as the opener during COVID times too, where everything is even still, a bit off. Hope that answered your question.
Sure it did.
Bit of a long-winded, but
it's all good.
Yeah. Work and Dying was also on that. Oh, that's right, because these songs were all basically off of One Heart Walking, which came out in 2014-15, Muso, which came out March 20th, 2020, which is perfect timing. The whole world shut down on March 15th, and, I had all these articles and reviews and, video things that we had all set up, and it was kind of like, hey, do you mind if we just put this out in a couple of weeks when everything blows over? And, 2 weeks, 2 years. Yeah.
So you mentioned that, these songs, you've played them for a long time. Had you ever done them in this format where it was just you and a guitar?
No, that was the one thing that I tried to, that was a conscious thing. I thought I would take some of the tunes that had some other form of, it wasn't as stripped down, none of them. So I thought that was kind of cool. And that's normally how I play. That's pretty much what I sound like on any given night. I think it's fairly consistent, mistakes and all, I thrive on mistakes. Some people get angry about them and things like that. But, usually if you're making a mistake, you're going for something different, trying to make it interesting, and then the next time you'll get it right. Sometimes you're just spaghetti brained, and it doesn't work. You just, it doesn't work anymore. And, that's it.
One of the songs I liked on the album, Sweet Mama Brown, what was there an inspiration behind that?
I think Sweet Mama Brown, I think, was more of like a lyric that came in my notebook. I would write just lyrics sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I know what I want. I'm just going to write something down. And I had the general idea for it. And then I took it to Chris because we tried to get together once a week and work on, you know, he writes rock tunes and I've got my blues. And then we're both also in a Christmas band that Hoboville picked up as well, the Ohio City Singers. And so we're always working on some kind of project. And it's good, too. It's fun to hang out and, you know, instead of playing a gig, just sit around in his garage and write songs. But maybe with a little bit of booze or something. And, you know, it's kind of a nice way to go, you know? So Sweet Mama Brown, I think, was just one of those things that I just happened to find it and go, what is this song? You know, and then I had an old kind of guitar line that I think I heard as a kid. It was something similar to it from Rory Block, like an instructional video or something. I don't know. But I just figured I'd use it. Nobody else was. So if it was even like that, I don't even know. I wouldn't even know where to find it. But maybe I made it up. I have no idea. But I know it was influenced by something that she did a long time ago in terms of the guitar line. But the lyric was just sitting in a notebook, and I was like, hey, this fits perfect. Cool, let's go.
Now, this slide guitar that you play, is it the same slide guitar you started out with, or has it evolved over the years?
The first one I bought was a Dobro. I bought a long time ago when I was about 16, 17. But I always wanted a National, but I couldn't afford them. And then I found one. It was a tricone over at this weird little place here in Cleveland called Goose Acres Music. They're out of business now. I think everybody passed on, but you know, it was a cool folk shop. They had like just a lot of acoustic type instruments and, you know, really dedicated to the acoustic scenes, you know. And I bought that National and I loved it, and I recorded a couple of tunes on it and sent it to National and asked them if they would sponsor me. And they said, yeah, you know, as long as we could use one of your songs on our, with their catalog. They sent out 2 CDs. And it was basically, if you wanted to hear what that guitar sounded like, listen to this song. And I ended up meeting this lady from France who was like, you know, I really like this song, but I can't find the lyrics anywhere. You know, my English is okay, but it's not great. You know, so I typed it out and sent it to her within a minute of her sending the email, and she was floored. Like, you know, I think she thought I was some kind of huge star, you know, just like a local bar guy, you know. Then she said, well, hey, if you're ever in France, you know, tell us, and, you know, you can stay at our place for a while, you know, she and her husband and family, you know, daughters and whatever. I was like, well, I'm going to be there in 3 months. And she said, wow, you know, I'll find you some work. And I said, okay. And I spent like a week over at their house. It was kind of in, you know, a friendship that's, you know, 15 years going at least, maybe 20. But that was the first guitar, the first real one that I was like, yeah, I've done it. I finally bought what I've always wanted.
So your Muscle Shoals being released through Hoboville Records. This is only their second album they've released under that imprint. How did you end up signing with Hoboville?
I have a friend here, David Spiro. He's managed all sorts of great people. Joe Walsh, Dickie Betts, Michael Stanley, John Fogerty. It goes on and on. Paul Rogers from Bad Company and Free. Yeah, I have lunch with him once a month. It's been going on for years. I love listening to his rock and roll stories. You know, it's real interesting, you know. And the one day, Hoboville, I think Thomas Ziegler had called David to ask about a band that he was managing called the Empty Pockets. And then he said, hey, we're starting a new label, like a bluesy roots music kind of label. Do you know any blues guys? And David said, I've got a guy that might be great for you. He told me to send them, like 20 songs throughout for my whole career, see if they liked it. And they did. So I was lucky. And then they picked me up. And then I met them last year. I was on a little tour in Sweden. Asked if I could meet with them in Cologne, Germany, and they were both game, and we got together and had dinner and chatted and a couple of beers, and I told them about the Christmas band, and they went, wow, Christmas, tell us more. So I sent them all the albums, and they loved it and said, well, we're going to put out the Christmas album before the blues album because it's perfect timing. And I said, okay. So they put out the first album that's called Love and Hope that the Ohio City Singers, that we all made. So it was a cool Christmas, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. So, and now it's my turn with the blues.
Is this your first solo blues record that's being released streaming digitally?
No, all of them have been up there. They've been, I think this is my 8th album, blues album, maybe 9. And I had all of them up streaming and all that stuff. But then with the record label, they had to change it around. And so we have to put up all that stuff under their name and all that stuff. So right now, some stuff might not be up there except for, I think, Waiting for a Little Sunshine and Living, Working, Dying.
Okay.
So, which is the other single.
You're a pretty busy guy playing gigs. I notice you're doing like the weekend thing locally. Is there anything in the future about either a U.S. tour or heading back overseas?
Yeah, I had a whole thing that was worked up to go to New Zealand and Australia and Hawaii. But New Zealand got nailed by a typhoon.
Yeah.
And, so that kind of changed everything. So they said, well, maybe next year. They'll still probably have the festival, but make it more local. So, and then what else is happening? I think nothing's set in stone, but it could be Sweden, Germany, and Ireland, and possibly Italy right now. And that'll be probably August and September.
You mentioned that you were inspired by B.B. King's Live at the Regal 1965 album to take up the blues and get into guitar. You actually opened up for B.B. King, I believe.
Yeah. That one was at the King Biscuit Blues Festival in Arkansas. It was pretty great, because and then I've met him a handful of times in addition. Real special, he was an amazing performer, and he used to play here in Cleveland. He and Bobby Blue Bland used to come to Cleveland, Ohio once every Easter to see Robert Jr. Lockwood, because they both considered him a mentor and a friend. So they would come to town and they would all hang out, and BB and Bobby would do 2 shows. And then as they got older, it went to one evening show. I started going when I was 19, and I probably went till like 1989 to 2006 when Mr. Lockwood died. That was when those 2 stopped coming every Easter. But I saw B.B. King probably more than anybody I've ever, any other musician. And he was great. He was an incredible voice, incredible guitar, class act.
I was always impressed that he claims he doesn't know any notes or any the chords or anything like that, and he's completely taught by ear. I was always impressed by that.
Yeah, he says that, but he knew his way around pretty well. He might not. I mean, everybody's different and everybody functions in different ways. But if he didn't know what he was doing and he did that well, man, that's awesome.
Now, you said earlier that you were just a bar guy, but you've played with Buddy Guy and Taj Mahal and ZZ Top and Robert Randolph and Deep Purple, Skinner, Nugent, Kenny Wayne. You've opened up for some pretty big guys, so I'd say you're cut above a bar guy.
Yeah, I still feel like a bar guy, no matter what I'm doing. Go anywhere. Like I really, a lot of the bar gigs, because I always played with bands. I always had a band until 2007, 2008, when that recession happened here in the States, or actually everywhere. Music was one of the first things to fall apart. Where people didn't have the money anymore. Can you play for half the money, and instead of 4 hours, you can play for 2, and then split it between 4 guys. It was rough. I started to do solo gigs a little bit more, and I was doing that anyway. And it was really kind of a refreshing thing. It was kind of almost like looking back at it, I think it was like the beginning of some kind of midlife thing, Like, man, something's got to change. I'm just so bored doing everything I do. And I really started focusing on, solo guitar. And then the band slowly fell apart. And, I just kept going at it. And then, using the internet and finding these little festivals. Like one, I was playing at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis. It's like the blues societies in every city or every area. The head blues society is in Memphis, and it's called the Blues Foundation. And they put on this International Blues Challenges. The people that have these societies hold a contest, and they have the winner as a solo duo act, and then they also have a winner that's a band. I was lucky enough to win a bunch of those and go down to Memphis. So the one year I made the finals, and I got asked to go to Nepal to play a Himalayan blues festival. Yeah, and I was like, wow. Well, I was looking at my schedule, and I was like, this corner bar, this, awful bar. And I'm like, man, I could totally go to Nepal for 2 weeks or something like that and see what happens. So I did. I had a great time, and there I met some, these 2 great Australians, Nicky and Mike Beale, and they went back home and were going to do a festival in Australia, and said, oh, we need somebody, probably like a solo person, preferably out of the country, something that we can, might have a little draw just because they're from another country. And they both said, we met this American in Nepal that was, he'd be pretty cool, and he was fun to hang out with. She listened to my stuff and then called me, and then I went to Australia. And then it was like a little bit of word of mouth, who do you know? And so, I don't know, man, I kind of lucked out, and a little bit of, hustling. So, because I was doing it all, I do it all myself. So I just find festivals and send them out, a little promo thing. And sometimes I get lucky that somebody wants to, hire me for something. So works out pretty cool.
There's an interesting story about how you got your nickname Walkin' Cane.
It was the first time I went to New Orleans. I was about 25 years old, and maybe 24. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and she wanted to look at like beautiful, some house tour. And I was like, I'm sure they're beautiful and all, but, I don't want to go look at houses. And it wasn't to buy. It was just like, they're beautiful places that we could never afford or something like that. And I was like, I want to go to the record stores. So I was walking down some weird street, and there was, a guy on the street. He's like, hey, brother, hey, Walkin' Cane, you got some spare change for a brother? I said, yeah, man. And I gave him some money, and I thought, Walkin' Cane. That would be kind of good because I was using a cane from when I was 16 till I was 26. And I thought I was going to use a cane for the rest of my life, but then I cut off my leg and now I don't need it. So, kind of screwed up the name. But, so I thought that would be a good thing, and I would grow into it. And, it'd be kind of like a cool thing. But then by the time I realized by 26, I was like, I had too many albums, and I had this weird thing that if I stopped using walking cane, that, I'd probably end up back on the cane. Like, dang. It's like, I know something would happen, So I thought I'd just keep it the way it is and see what goes down. So I've been pretty lucky, I guess.
Still a conversation piece, just the same.
Yeah, still after all these years. Yeah, but so it was that one guy. I gave him like $10, and I think I had a piece of like an orange or something. Like, here, man. That like two cities I think have really blown my mind musically, and the first one was New Orleans. Hearing the brass bands down on Jackson Square playing on a Saturday afternoon for tips. Maybe a dozen people and it's just the most amazing thing. I had heard that kind of stuff before on record, and I thought it was cool, but it didn't really hit me the way it did until I saw it live, and then went, oh, I get it. And then, it's like, and it completely, like stuff like the Dirty Dozen Brass Band and Rebirth Brass Band and Kermit Ruffins and stuff like that, were really kind of, it gets you like, wow. And then the other town was Clarksdale, Mississippi, when I first went there. And that was only maybe 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then it all made sense. And I was going in that direction and I didn't even know it, just in my head and the way I was playing. And then I heard those guys down there, like Robert Belfour and George Brock and, and how they played, and, ended up making a lot of friends down there and kind of absorbed some of the style from down there. And it's all over this Muscle Shoals record. Sometimes it can be hypnotizing in a way. You're just kind of hanging on something and going for it.
You mentioned them a couple of times, the Ohio City Singers. You do like a rock and roll Christmas album with that. How did you get involved with that initially?
It was about 20 years ago. Literally, yeah, I think it was 2002 was the first time we did it. My friend Chris Allen, the co-writer, his dad said, write a Christmas song. And Chris said, okay. A lot of times, you write a Christmas song, it can go sometimes a sad route, And we were trying to write like songs that you'd want to hear for more timeless songs and see what happens. Make it the happy side of Christmas and so that we have all these songs like, Love and Hope and Snow Days and Eggnog and all these ridiculous songs that are really fun. And it slowly evolved into a thing where, the initial plan was Chris had a party and we wrote these songs and we'd rehearse the band once, whoever was going to be at the party. It was basically musicians and their girlfriends and boyfriends and maybe a couple of stragglers. And we'd sit around and pass around sheets of paper with highlighted lines that everybody sings. It doesn't matter if you can sing, you're just like yelling them out. After doing and then we'd have this huge party and every one of them was incredible. One was even during like a miserable blizzard, and there were still like 30 people crammed into this little house going, screaming these songs. And it was really great. And after about 5 years of it, we realized that we had about 40 original Christmas songs, and we sent it to Don Dixon, who liked it. So Don Dixon produced REM's first record. He's worked with Joe Cocker and the Smithereens, Counting Crows, and a million different other acts. And he lives now only an hour away. And he liked it so much, he was like, "Can I join the band and record you guys?" And he's like, "Yeah." So, Don Dixon's in our band because it's so unique. And it's pretty much a rock and roll Christmas band, but they're tunes you've never heard before. And we get, 1,000 people to our shows dressed up like Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus, and, snowflakes and elves, and, the Grinch, and, all sorts of stuff. It's almost like a Christmas funkadelic. It's turning into something way beyond just the music. People just go just to go.
You have a side project coming up with Gary Vincent, or it was released recently?
Wow. You know Gary?
I don't really know Gary, but I know you guys are working on a side project.
Oh, man. Word travels fast. I met Gary about a year and a half, 2 years ago through my friend Libby Ray Watson. Girlfriend and I were heading down to Mississippi, and we were just going to hang out for a little while. And it was still during, all the craziness. So there wasn't much work, and it wasn't that hard to get away. And it was the same thing. Come on down, stay for a couple of weeks, or as long as you want. It doesn't matter. Nobody's renting these little cabins we were there, renting over at the Shacksdale Motel in Clarksdale, Mississippi. And so we went down there, and Libby says, "Hey, I'm here too. It'll be great to hang with you." She's a good friend of mine. And she said, "We're going to have dinner at the Vincent's with the Musselwhites." And I was like, "The Musselwhites? You mean Charlie Musselwhite?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, man, this is going to be unbelievable." So, yeah, that was my first meeting of Gary and Carol Vincent. I go to their house where the studio's at and, meet Charlie and Henrietta Musselwhite, And Henry's amazing. She's Charlie's manager.
Yeah.
And she's top notch. I've learned a lot from her. She's pretty amazing. And Charlie's incredible. And Gary's an insane, awesome person, hilarious humans all the way around. And Gary, I liked one of his tunes, "Devil's Been Looking for a Few Good Souls," I think that was a chorus. He changed the name though. But anyway, that was the vibe. And I was like, "Yeah, I really like that tune." And he goes, "You want to record it?" And I go, "Sure." And he just goes in the back. I'm like, "You have a studio back here?" I didn't even know, And we started working on it. And by the next day, it was done. And that was it. So then he's like, "Hey, I've got this other song. You want to try that?" And Gary and I've recorded now probably like seven or eight of his songs. And, he's really like tried to, get him in my system too, so I actually have to start working on them a little bit because I was going to do some more work when I go down in April. So for the Juke Joint Festival down there. So I'll see all those guys.
Do you just always bring your guitar everywhere you go for when these opportunities present themselves? Because they seem to be kind of like one situation leads to the next music opportunity for you.
Yeah. I mean, I take my guitar a lot. I feel more, sometimes when I just even like go to my parents' house and I come home, I'll like, "Oh, I didn't take a guitar with me. Oh, that's good. I don't have to carry anything in the house." It's just, but I think it's most likely it's always with me.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. And, it's weird too. Like, even if somebody has a guitar, it's like, "Hey, let me check that out." It's like, "Oh, do you play?" "Yeah." And then play a song like, "Wow, that was pretty cool." And then, you meet new people, and it's all about that weird circle. Sometimes the circle gets a little bit bigger with each person, and after a while, maybe it'll just spread out real far.
Those are all the questions I have for you today, Austin. The new album, Muscle Shoals, is out March 17th through HOBOVILLE Records. Fantastic album. You should be very proud of it, and I wish you the best of luck with it.
Thanks a lot, George. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, I learned a lot about you and your music, and I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks a lot.
Maybe I'll see you out there sometime if you get up to the East Coast.
Yeah, where are you at?
I'm in Massachusetts.
Oh, really?
I'm near
right.
Plymouth Rock, and when I say near Plymouth Rock, it's about a mile away.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I've never been up that way. Been to Boston, but that's about it.
Oh, it's much different than Boston in these parts. It's not quite as bustling.
Yeah, Boston was too much for me.
That's how I feel about New York. New York was just crazily insane. Everything's in your face. Everything's so bright. It's like, I can't stay here more than a couple days.
Yeah, it's too much. It's weird because I've been to New York City probably a dozen times, and I think I've seen a quarter of it.
Well, it only repeats every 4 blocks. So if you've seen that 1/4, you've seen it all.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get up your way just to see what it's like. And so if you got any clubs up there that might take a one-legged dude that want to play some bluesy music, I'll be up there in a heartbeat.
I will. I'll keep my ears open. I don't know of a lot of blues around here, but there's always something opening up or some venue changing around. I'm sure there's some opportunities.
Yeah, because usually if there's an acoustic music place, I can, I play a lot of breweries.
We got those.
And that always works at those kind of places. So, when in doubt, look for breweries and wineries. Yeah. So, just so you could stay out a little bit longer than running home after a little tour,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cool, George. Thanks so much, brother. And I'll definitely stay in touch.
Once again, I want to thank Austin Walkin Cane for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out his latest album, Muscle Shoals, out now through HOBOVILLE Records. Head over to your favorite music streaming site. Take a listen to the album. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy. Support the artist. For all things Austin Walkin Cane, head over to his official website, walkincane.com. I also